Good to see you. I'm gonna stay for the whole meeting this time.
But I'm
Early.
We are live. Good evening, everyone. This is the Goffstown Planning Board. Today is October 27th. This is our second regularly scheduled meeting of the month. Today, we have a matter of old business, which was continued from October 13th, and an item of new business in regards to a conceptual hearing. Before we address any of that or some other items, I would like everybody here to please identify themselves. Jonathan, if we could start with you.
I'm Jonathan Ork, the Planning and Zoning Administrator.
Kimberly Peace.
David Pierce, the Selectmen's representative.
Gayla Breck, Recording Secretary.
My name is Barbara Griffin.
Philip Devanza.
Tim Redmond.
Jim Raymond.
Thank you, everyone. The first item on our agenda, you have a handout in front of you tonight. That includes upcoming meetings and a couple of items that, one of which we'll probably look at tonight. So the first item is the minutes of October 13th, 2016. Those were given to you with your packet since our last meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion
And would that be to approve?
to approve. Yes, thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And are there any adjustments to the minutes? Any amendments? I'm seeing none, so I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it carries
I'm
unanimously.
gonna abstain because I didn't stay for the entire meeting.
There's one word that was off, but
Can you live with it?
I can live with it.
There you go.
Okay.
Well, apparently you're going to live with it.
Wait, this is what the-
All right, the second item of the action items, I would, with the board's permission, like to address on the 17th, because we have a couple of items in regards to rules and regulations of this board, and the 17th is scheduled for a workshop. So, again, with the board's permission, I'm going to move on to the first item on our agenda, which is an item of old business. This is in regards to map 6, lots 1-2 and 1-4. This is a completeness review, site plan review hearing for proposed storage facilities on the 2 lots. 8 storage buildings would be on lot 1-2, totaling 46,800 square feet, and 6 buildings would be on lot 1-4, totaling 24,800 square feet. This property is located on the Goffstown Back Road, Tower Lane, and is owned by the McDonough Family Properties LLC. This is zoned commercial industrial flex. This was continued for the October 13th, 2016 meeting, and if anybody is not aware of where this property it is, it's on the Goffstown Back Road. It is it is the last property in Goffstown before you cross the line into Manchester, and it is where the towers are back there. So, Jonathan, if you want to just update us, we did hear this on the 13th, but why don't you bring us through it?
Certainly. They originally came the 13th and gave us a brief presentation of what they would like to do. There were some questions about the property and easement and the different phases. I think they've come tonight to address some of those issues that the board have.
Okay.
And speaking with them at J. Heavysides and Mr. McDonough, they went to the Conservation Commission last night. There were not minutes, but the staff report from the Conservation Commission addressing some of the issues that we asked them to go to the Conservation Commission as well.
And was that one of the items that we had tonight?
Yes, yes it is.
Okay.
It should have been should be highlighted. Find it.
So
Yes.
everybody should have this in their packet. Has the applicant been provided with this?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
They were just provided with it tonight because they didn't have an opportunity for the minutes to be completed yet, so.
Okay. Now, in connection with this, we granted a waiver request for acceptance as to a traffic study.
Correct.
And we did hear some of the presentation before. We asked the applicant to come forward. Did any board members have any questions about where we're at with this particular one? Just so everybody is on the same page in regards to this, this did go in front of Conservation tonight. We have been provided unofficial minutes, and it would appear that the commission voted to recommend that the rain garden on lot 1-4 be inspected and that, and 1-4 is the one, I believe, up adjacent to Goffstown Back Road, and that a maintenance report be done in regards to that. So I see that Megan is here, if there are any questions about that. And there was also a recommendation in regards to landscaping in regards to the storage units on the back road. So the applicant has that and was present at the meeting. Okay. Anything else? All right, let's ask the applicant to come down. Thank you.
My part of this evening, hopefully won't be too long. Just confirming what...
Jay, could you give us your
Oh,
name for the record?
Jay Heavysides from Meridian Land Services, the
Thank you.
design engineer. Also here tonight, representing McDonough Family Properties is Mark McDonough. And we also have Attorney Greg Michael with us tonight, too. As you said, the Conservation Commission, they heard it, and their main concerns were the landscaping along Goffstown Back Road, and that they just said Lot 4-1 for the maintenance report. I believe they meant for both of the rain gardens that yearly inspections would be done and copies supplied to the town. So where we left off 2 weeks ago was the issue about the frontage and if it was legal for the back lot, Phase 2, to be built on, given that the road has not been accepted by the town yet. And so to speak to that point, I'll let Mr. Greg Michaels come up and address you.
Thank you, Jay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Pleasure to be here. Attorney Greg Michael on behalf of the McDonough family. Appreciate the opportunity to take a few moments to address the board about issues that arose at your last meeting. I did have the opportunity to review the minutes of the 13th? I think it was the 13th meeting. Thank you. At least the minutes that were in draft form at that time, and understood a couple of the issues that may have perplexed the board a bit regarding the issue of erecting buildings. What we have, as the board is well aware, is a subdivision that was approved in 1999. It was, I think, further things happened in the plans. Both plans, I think, were recorded in the Registry of Deeds more or less at the same time, and it depicts the road Tower Lane, which hasn't changed. That has not changed. We have an approved recorded plan on record. And basically, 67441 discusses and gives guidance to towns about issuing permits on these types of roads. And you don't need to be a genius to read it. It is a little bit difficult sometimes to follow the flow of events in the statute, but essentially, what it talks about, and subsection B of Part 1, it first starts out, you ought to be on a Class 5 road, no secret there. But as the board is well aware, there are many ordinances, regulations, and rules in the various towns that don't necessarily follow that kind of classic pattern. I've done zoning work throughout the state, and the one thing that I've never seen is a zoning ordinance identical. Never, anywhere. They don't exist in New Hampshire as far as I'm concerned. It's a local issue, as it should be, voted on locally as it should be, and they're all a little bit different to take into account the needs of the various municipalities and towns and cities, which makes sense. But anyway, if you turn to the statute, I prepared a letter that I'll deliver to the board. I'm going to kind of review it with you now.
Do you have copies for board members?
I do. I do.
If you don't mind, why don't you pass it out
Oh,
now?
I'd be
It'll
happy to
probably
give
be
you
more
copies of it.
better for the board members to have it in
I'll
front of
give
them.
the original to
Jonathan.
your planner,
Thank
and
you.
then I've got a number of copies.
Great, thank you.
I can just keep my fingers on one of them, please.
That way we
think-
don't
I
have to
think-
rely on our own handwriting to follow.
And in any event, the statute has a number of factors that it considers in determining whether permits can be issued. And again, I point out, this is a valid subdivision. It was valid at the time. The frontage for Lot 1, I'm really focusing on 1-2. That's the lot with the frontage at the end of Tower Lane. And again, thank you. That was the way this plan was established and has existed, as I pointed out. And in it, the statute says, 1 and 1B, if the roadway corresponds in its location and lines with a, quote, street on a subdivision plat approved by the planning board, a permit can issue. And that's really where we are. And I would point out, I'm sure the board is aware of many projects where a road is proposed. The planning board is the road approving, designing, implementing authority under the statute when you have a planning board, that when that road is approved, you establish the basic conditions surrounding it. This was intended to be a town road, admittedly, and projects start with what is supposed to be a town road. Permits are issued, the road ordinarily is bonded, and later, when the project is done, then the top coat is applied. Sometimes there's a year or two warranty by the developer on the road, and then the road can be accepted. But notice what I've said, permits issued, buildings were built. And you're relying upon the fact that until that happens, what occurs? The owners/developers pay to maintain and plow the roadway. You don't. You don't. So the buildings are up. I've got a subdivision in Belmont right now. Houses are up, roads are there, but my clients are tweaking the road. They didn't want to pave the top coat until some of the construction was done. But there are houses, buildings, road bonded, and now we're moving to finalize that. But I point out the permits were issued. And, you know, there's some reasons for this. There's other statutes that kind of come into play when you look at this whole dynamic. You know, we've got our, I think it's 265 or 261-39, which talks about roadways that are platted and public servitude attaches. It used to be, prior to 1989, when they amended the statute, that if you didn't build the road, everything went away. Now the statute says public servitude attaches for at least 20 years, then it can be terminated, but you have to have a vote of the local legislative body. In this case, it would be the selectmen. So there's a lot of these things that kind of merge together, but the theory being is it's important that that status remain so that this roadway can be built either by the town, by people abutting it, which is what's going to happen. The likelihood of the town of Goffstown putting the final coat in this road and accepting it is probably about as likely as me going to the moon tomorrow. You know what I mean? That ain't going to happen, and I know that. And we know that. So where you are is there's nothing wrong with approving your site plan, nothing. The road is there. In fact, the base coat's down. It's an approved plan, and its corresponding location is shown on the plan. At some point, it's intended to be a Class 5 road. We know this. Until that time, the owners and any other people there are required to maintain and pave it if they have to, fix it, until it's raised to an appropriate standard. I would point out that this is a industrial/commercial area. I mean, this isn't a residential area. I knock on wood, thank goodness, I suppose. But, you know, in looking at this, my clients intend to use the easement that they have for access to Lot 1-2. They can either access off the end of Tower Lane, or they can access off the, what was an easement, and part of that was granted to the town a number of years ago when this was approved. I think in 2006, the easement deed was granted to the town of Goffstown for that purpose. So we have access, we have a road, we have a plan. We believe that there's nothing unusual about this, other than it's taken a few years. And we believe strongly that the statute clearly allows us to get a permit as long as the site plan is approved, build on it. But the responsibility, and my clients have said to me that they will be responsible for plowing all the way down through the cul-de-sac, because that's where their frontage is, maintaining that as needed until such time, and I expect the such time will be, I'll be candid, is when those lower lots start to be developed. Then I think at that point, it's very likely that the road would then be fully paved. It's a bit unfortunate that the bond apparently lapsed. That's what I'm hearing. I read that in the minutes. And you know what? Hey, it happens. But we're prepared to move ahead. We're prepared to do what we need. I will tell you that I've spoken to Mr. Nazer, who owns one of the lots that was also approved by this board a while back. He and the McDonoughs are going to be paving that first piece of the road in. They're going to be putting the top layer there. They're going to be bringing the pavement over to the hammerhead, and they're also going to be bringing the pavement partway across the first storage lot. So a fair amount of the paving of Tower Lane is going to occur in this proposal right now. It's just that kind of lower area that really doesn't service a whole lot, that would be left in its current reasonable status. I've been kind of, yapping away at this. I'm happy to try and answer questions, but I believe that if you look at the statute and look at it carefully, that it's clear that this is allowed. And if you look back at projects that have received approvals and construction has started where the road has not been fully accepted, you've seen it yourselves. This is not, not that unusual. It happens. Thank you.
Board members. If I could sort of lead off, I'm a little confused, because the application, which is very easy to do, I will point out. But I did want to say one thing before I forgot, just so you're aware, this actually really is fairly residential back here. Manchester actually sent us comments in regards to residential property on one side of the development. There's a house on the other side, the abutters concerns we had to take into account in conjunction with it, and while there's a commercial property across the way, it appears to be largely residential. I just wanted to say that before.
My only point is I don't think Tower Lane services any residential
okay,
area. That was
all right.
really what I meant.
That was what you
Madam
meant,
Chair.
okay, thank you. So I'm clear, when the application I heard last week proposed access through the easement,
Correct.
and it still proposes access.
Correct.
And your proposal is that Tower Lane, as to what pavement exists, will be maintained to
Yes.
the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think that's the right thing to do, is just add a little safety, whatever you want to call it. No, I think that's the right thing to do. And plus, I think I read the minutes, there's also a drainage, I won't say issue, but I know Mr. Nazar's lot depends in some extent to the drainage along that roadway. That's what I read. The drainage on the two McDonough lots is pretty much contained within the lots. That's what I read in the minutes as well, if I'm not, I think that's what I looked at.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Since I was the one that raised the question, and I don't necessarily...
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, it's good to see you. I don't necessarily disagree with Attorney Michael, but if you recall, the question I raised is where, he's correct that one of the exceptions is a street on a subdivision plat approved by the planning board. But in this case, the street was never completed. The bond lapse is not being maintained, so the purpose of the statute isn't being met. If one of the conditions of the approval is, as they volunteered or offered, is to plow to the cul-de-sac, it may eliminate that question. Technically, this road is shown on a plat approved by the planning board that we did not revoke, but the road was never finished, thereby not really meeting the intent of the statute, because it's supposed to be to provide access to the frontage, for better or worse. But the proposal, and if you recall, I said there may be some solutions. One is simply to go to selectmen, because I could take away the issue. I'm not sure I disagree with his proposal if it's built into the conditions, because in that case, it is a road shown on a subdivision plan approved by the town, and the purpose of providing actual access would be maintained as a condition of the approval, and he's kind of met my concern. So I think this may be a way out of it. Let me ponder it a bit. I've read his letters several times. Attorney Michael's smarter than I am, so it takes me a while to work through it.
Right, but just so I'm clear, it would appear that this is permissive statutory language, not mandatory. And I guess my question for board members is, as we've heard, we approve plans and we don't get involved in the issuance of permits because the plan is approved. Somebody comes in, the town holds a bond, the project's other departments issue the permits, correct?
But there's some case law, and Bart Mayer could cite the case out of memory, maybe Greg can, but it says we cannot approve a lot for which a permit could not be issued normally. So that's why it does flow back to the planning board on lot approval. It's not just a matter of kicking it down to the building inspector. We're not supposed to approve a non-buildable lot, therefore, and so that's why
Right.
it's a threshold planning board issue in my view. Other people might
I'm thinking more as a practical matter, because as Attorney Michael was talking about, development and permits are issued. More typically, we're talking houses are built. And at that point, in a perfect world, then everything is done and occupancy permits are issued. We all know that is not the course of events sequentially every time. But my concern here is what is required for the condition of the road. This is not a finished road, and I don't know that I want to get into, for purposes of future issues, is the road material built such that permits can issue? So I can see issues in regards to this in the future. Tim?
Thank you, Barbara. So on page 2 of Attorney Michael's letter that he gave us, the beginning on the end of the third sentence, it says, "It is a private roadway which services the lots as shown on the subdivision." The concern I have is that we've had a history of private roads, quote-unquote, in the town of Goffstown, where people have built on private roads, and then when it's time for a major repair or an overlay or something needs to be done, and there's no one willing to step up and do it, those people have petitioned the Board of Selectmen to perform a betterment assessment, and the town paid for the final work on the road, and then they were, as frontage owners, they were charged for the work. I would not like to consider this, ever consider it a private road, unless a condition is clearly stated that the owners or the frontage owners on this road are ultimately responsible for any final paving on this road, and that they would never seek the town to do so under any betterment assessments or anything to that effect.
And just so you know, that's a legal condition that you
Tell me,
can
what do you
impose.
mean by a legal condition?
You can state that the developers, we agree, we'll agree. I can't agree for the world at large, but we can agree that we will not petition the town to accept this as a town road unless it's raised and built to an appropriate town standard.
And
I mean,
paid
I
for?
can, well, it's got to be not paid for by you people. It's got to be raised to an appropriate
Well,
town standard.
if a properly worded condition states that clearly, I would be in favor of that.
Okay.
But I am not in favor of describing this as a private road.
No, I understand, but just remember, we can't control other people in the town of Goffstown. I can tell you that we won't make any such request unless it's brought to town standards at someone's expense other than the town. I mean, we'd be certainly prepared to do that, and that's fair.
Well, therein is,
That was always the intent of this, and, you know, I know that can happen. You're right, I mean, I've seen cases, I helped some people in Londonderry, they're in a 100-lot subdivision with private roads, and they wanted to bring a petition warrant article to the town to accept those roads, and they did, and it passed.
well, your own statement is problematic for me, because you stated that you're speaking for your client. You are willing to accept your fair share of any road improvements, but there are, at a glance, at least 3 other lots down there,
Well,
which means that you can't speak for those 3 landowners now or in the future.
But you can. But you can, wait a minute, let's follow this. I don't mean to interrupt, I apologize. Remember, to do anything on those lots, they have to come here, right? And at that point, you would have the power to say, Now with the increased traffic, the increased utilization of that road, we now want that finished to town standards. We just don't need it done that way at this time.
So
We don't need it.
conversely, we could say that you should pay for that whole road to be topped prior to issuing of a permit, and you can collect from those landowners when they build their properties out, whether it's in 1 year or 15 years.
No, we can't, because we don't control those properties.
Well,
We do not control those properties, sir. I hear you. We're trying to get something going down there, and my expectation will be, this is me being candid, that having some activity there, further things happening there, will hopefully attract additional folks, and I would suggest that at that point, Tower Lane will be completed. But really, we can't be put in a position of warranting what would happen. You folks are in the position to determine what happens to those lower 3 lots. You folks are in the position to drive that bus at the appropriate time. And I think it's somewhat unfair, in this instance, where the bond has run out. We're doing our best to come in and what we believe to do the right thing. You know, we're building half of the puzzle here. We're doing what we can to make this work in a way that I think is fair and appropriate. We will maintain it, we will plow it, we're not expecting anything from the town. But to suggest that somehow we should shoulder that entire burden at this point for our storage facility, we respectfully disagree, and I don't mean to disagree.
And I concur with your statement that I would love to see all the lots developed down there. And I think this
I hear you.
application for this project is a great application. I don't have any problems with the application.
Thank you.
I have the concern from the town's point of view, from the taxpayer's point of view, that at some point in time, somebody's going to be here asking for what other roads in Goffstown have asked for and received. And I just don't believe that it's a good way to be in the planning business. It's bad planning.
Yeah, but the likelihood of the town in any way, shape, or form voting to somehow expend funds for that short roadway, anything can happen.
It has happened.
Well, for something this short, this small, in our commercial zone, not residential?
Well, we could go up and measure Parsons Lane, and we can measure that road, and I can tell you the
I hear you.
differential between the two if you'd like me to do that for
I
you.
hear you, I hear you. I'm just, I
I'm not being argumentative.
You're not, and I
I'm
agree.
holding my ground on my position.
agree. I hear you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I guess.
Oh, that's Kimberly, sorry.
So, Tim, so you say you don't want to accept this as a private road. What, are you pushing to have them complete the road and have it accepted as a town road as part of this plan? I guess I'm looking at what the options are.
I accept their statement that they have the right, based on all the statutory information we received, to receive a permit to build on that property. What I don't want to see happen is what has happened in the town of Goffstown. Later on, when the other 3 lots are built out and interest rates are high and those 3 lots are built out and they're maxed out on their expenses and their businesses aren't doing so great, and now the road needs to be fixed, we really can't afford to do it.
Right.
And they come to the board and they ask for a betterment assessments, and if it's $75,000 to bring the road up to standards and pave it, you divide it by the frontage of each landowner, it's a calculated number, and that's what you owe. And then the town accepts payments from these landowners while other roads that taxpayers have put money into the road plan for are not fixed because we're doing a betterment assessment down here. We did it on Parsons Landing. I was against it then. I'm still against it.
So, well, what if we run that scenario in the future again and we say, we don't? So these all build out and in the future this road needs to be fixed, and everyone says, but you guys bought these parcels with this road and you guys all have to fix your own road for the sake of your own businesses.
That's a selectman's decision. That would be a no vote on the Board of the Selectmen.
Okay.
This is why we normally require that a road is completed, topped, and accepted by the town prior to any permits being issued. That's been a normal practice, whereas
Right.
Attorney Michael has shown us in the statute that there are avenues that can be pursued.
I'll just chime in a little bit with that. I think my recollection, Tim, from being on the Board of Selectmen, and it's been a while and my memory is not very good anymore, is that often permits and occupancy permits were issued before roads were accepted.
Oh, yeah.
Which, so I think you were, just so we're all aware, you're citing sort of how it should be done as compared to, as a practical matter, how it is often done. Which leads to things like mailboxes having to be moved and arguments over trash pickup and all sorts of
The
things.
project off of Shirley Hill, long, whatever that is down there, that was not finished. People were screaming because no one would pick up their trash at front of their homes because it wasn't a town road and town vehicles are not allowed to go on there to pick up their trash. This is not the case, this is a commercial. There won't be trash pickup here. But in that case, that was the problem, that was one of the problems.
Phil?
Tim, I share your concern very much.
For purposes of their improvements and access will be through the easement off the hammerhead of Tower Lane, which will be finished to a Class 6 road with the assistance of the owner of 613, and that they will plow to the cul-de-sac. If we're not going to accept that proposition, there is no plan for this lot, Jim.
Well, I would then, it's not a final motion, but at least a motion for us
Right.
to debate so we can go forward, that, given that the issue that was raised was one of statutory application and interpretation, not our zoning, and assuming that all other zoning and planning issues are addressed, that we accept the offer made by the applicant for the following reasons. First, that Tower Lane is in fact shown on a subdivision plat approved by the planning board. So it meets the statutory exception in 670